Okay, welcome. We are going to start drawing. We are here for the re-recording really of our cats drawing draw along, cartoon draw along, and so let us get right into it. I'm going to share my screen because that's always a little bit of a dodgy option, and sometimes we get a bit of lag on it. So I just want to get that up and going so that we can see what's happening. And yeah, here we are. So screen sharing, and let's get going and see how this goes. So I'm going to give us a few of our, we want to start with our formula as we did before. So I'm going to put 4 very rough circles like this. And the first one is very much going to be directional lines looking to the left. And this is the same formula that you're familiar with. We're going to move from using this formula. I'm going to then show you just kind of the signature characteristics of a cat, which I'm sure you know, and if you don't know consciously, you will recognize. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I know you are going to want to, rather, the formula is useful because it helps us to get a sense of perspective. It helps us to get snouts or beaks or noses, whatever they are, standing out from the face so that you get a sense of depth. And that's important for any cartoon character, human, animal, whatever. But obviously, once you kind of get a sense of this is where all the features sit and how I can put them together, you're going to want to start practicing and then experimenting and developing a style of your own. So to start, you always start somewhere and then gradually morph out to get a style of your own. And so that's why I want to show you cat characteristics and then just a few little ways that you can still, using the basics of the formula, just move slightly away from it so that you get that sense of how your imagination can start working with what you're reading. So diving in. Formula, here we go. As always, we start with the smaller, further away eye, and then I'm putting the closer eye is slightly bigger. I'm putting in pupils to show the direction of the gaze, and then just filling in the outer side of the eyelid, and up and over to give us an eyebrow for each of those. And then a cat has a little tiny sort of triangle nose, fairly well below the eyes. So I'm putting that in. And then I like to put in, cats often have almost like a sad little kind of downward V for their mouths, but I like to make it curve upward a little bit because that makes them look happier. And then, as always, we're going to come and curve out the side of the cheek like this because that takes it round. And they have a little round area of their face like this, a little snout, as it were, round the mouth. And that comes down to a little chin, often at the bottom. So putting in the chin, bringing this round, and then big cat ears. And I think of the ears as kind of on the outside corners of the head, if heads had corners, which of course they don't really. And you can see this is a sort of Tom and Jerry style cartoon cat, really. That's probably the closest, or that's what it kind of says to me, you know, in terms of how I think of this sort of cat style, a very classic cartoon cat, but in the Tom and Jerry-ish sort of cartoon style. And then, of course, some whiskers, and the further away whiskers are generally a bit shorter than the closer whiskers, and that is our first little kitty. I'm going to just take out a few of the messier lines in between. But you can see how having the crosshairs there gives us a place to kind of seat the bottom half of the face and to get that curve through coming out. So let's have a look at the opposite direction. I'm going to put directional lines going now, turning to my right. And again, formula coming to the fore, putting the eyes in. I'm going to make the pupils, let me make them look this way, kind of looking back at the first face that I've already drawn, because that just gives you a sense of how you can have the nose facing in one direction, but the actual cat looking in a different direction. So here we've got a little mouth. Once again, I'm going to put some eyebrows, because eyebrows are good, and bring down the curve of the face out and round like this. Bring it round here, and a little chin, and once again going in with cat ears, And there's a kind of the inner side of the ear, a little bit of hair between the ears, and then some nice kitty whiskers like that. And now you've got your two faces. Okay, so now the third one here, we're going to make this one just kind of face on, which obviously is the absolute one of the least dynamic angles that you can ever use, but it's useful to just see what a cat face looks like face on. So we're going to put the eyes, now they're going to be pretty much the same size, and I'm going to almost make this one look down and see I've got one eye at a slightly different angle than the other, and little snouty nose down the bottom, little curvy thingies, little curvy mouth, and here this little chin, and whiskers, 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 and we've got ears. So you notice that I never, you don't want to have any straight lines really. So make lines always slightly curved, and you'll end up with a much more dynamic looking, interesting looking kitty or anything, whatever you're drawing, better to have curved lines than not curved lines. Okay, so that is your cat. And let's just have a look at this one I'm going to put as number 4 here, a complete sort of a side on basically. So we'll end up with an ear sort of like this, make it ear bent forward like that, and kitty eye like this, and the little eyebrow up the top. And then the snout's going to go out. We're going to have this sort of side angle of this little mouth, and it's a wee chin like that, and some whiskers, and the neck would kind of come in like that, and this would be where if he had a collar or something, it would be there. So you can see here, if I erase out these lines, you can see the little face pointing forward there, and then his mouth comes like that. Little chin would kind of be there, and then neck would go down like that. I don't even think, you might not even notice the chin from the side, to be honest. You would end up more with the mouth like that and chin coming round. So this is just to give you a side on kind of look, and often in cartoons you'll find that these eyebrows will stick out beyond, beyond the edge of the head. And that actually happens in real life. If you look at the profile of the person next to you, next time you're sitting, you'll probably see that their eyebrows do stick out, form a profile kind of edge of their head. So that is how you end up getting a side-on profile of your kitty. I'm just going to get rid of these arrows that I've put here so that we've got a cleaner page. And now we're just going to quickly look at what I think of as cat signature, the cat signature look. Okay, so kitty signature look is what I think of as an M, separated M for the ears on the outer corners of the head, obviously whiskers, and this little teeny tiny triangular nose. So if I go and say really rough circle, or even without a circle, let's just go with ears. So this is a cat kind of signature look. 2 spiky ears like that, a little triangular nose like that, with probably with the little smiley whatevers, a wee chin, whiskers, and now you've got a cat. Whatever you do with the eyes, whether you make them big, whether you make them small, whether you make them angled, this is your cat's signature, okay? And I want you to look at that and just see how it fits in with what we've done up above. We can soften out all these lines, but basically it's whiskers, triangular nose, and pointy ears at the sort of corners of the head, and that gives you your cat. So you might be thinking, well, what if I want to draw a different kind of a cat, more of a Siamese kind of a cat? So Siamese kind of cats tend to be a lot more almost triangular. So instead of a very round face, you might end up, and again, I'm drawing face on because triangular face, you need to see it. So again, you're going to have these, you're going to have your triangular kind of ears, and I'm making them, trying not to use straight lines because it's just better not to. It just looks better if you don't use completely straight lines for them. And then we're going to have our kitty eyes, and the Siamese cats do often have quite angled eyes, almond-shaped eyes and angled eyes. And then your little nose like that, and your big whiskers. And so then you end up with your kitty like this. And obviously this is a very, very triangular face. So you wouldn't want to have it so kind of angled at the top. But this is more what your triangular kitty would look like. I'm actually just going to reduce the depth of the triangle that I used, because I made it quite narrow at the, kind of, it needs to be shallower. So let's just go like this, little snout, little chin, and here are your eyes. And often the Siamese cats almost do look like they've got a little bit of a squint, don't they? What is that about Siamese cats with the squint? So we could make these guys squint and then maybe look a little bit more Siamese. Okay, and then obviously, when you go in and you add color to your Siamese kitty, you can put in the seal point or the gray point, whatever they are, and that will make them more like it. Or else, what if you just want a big, fat, cozy kitty? So let's go with like a much rounder, kind of wider face instead of the tall face. And again, we're going to have our ears kind of on the corner, slightly curved lines like this. We might have like a little bit of hair sticking up like that. And let's make this a sleepy kitty. So it's fast asleep, but it's still got its triangular nose and mouth. Oopsie. And little curve like that. And this guy can have his little chin and whiskers, whiskers, whiskers. So now we've got a snoozy kitty. And maybe for such a comfortable kitty, we don't want such spiky, so we can make it more relaxed. So let's go with this kind of hair. Softer kitty hair all around. Right? For some cats are just really, really furry. So if we make them much furrier, softer kind of curly lines like this round, now suddenly we've got a softer cat. Okay. So that is your, just moving away from the very round, very Tom and Jerry kind of look of the cat. Now we've gone into cat signature, something for slightly more Siamese, so getting into a very specific cat breed. I find the furrier the cat, actually the trickier it is to make it look very specific, because there's just so little definition under there. But talking about definition, now what we're going to do is we're going to get into drawing a cat body. Because once you have a sense of, okay, this is how I can, like certain body parts, which are sort of the anchoring parts for the cat, you will be able to draw them more easily. So let's hop in and do that. So I am going to pop up a different, a sort of blank page, as it were. And now I want to, we're going to do a sitting cat to start off. So first up, let's just put ourselves a little kitty head like this. I'm going to put little nose and mouth side like that. Actually, I'm just going to put them in like this. And we've got an eye, facing forward, eyebrow, little ear coming up. This ear in like this, the curly ear, and a little bit of this ear that we can't really even see so much of, and some whiskers. Now we're going to go in and let me just curve this out a little bit more so that we get a bit more roundness. Okay, so if we're wanting to draw a cat sitting on its haunches, the first thing we need is its chest. You know how a kitty tends to, when they sit, their little chest puffs out a little bit between their front legs. So if we use ourselves an egg kind of shape like this, reaching forward, and then they've also got, if you think about a cat, it's got a nice big round haunch at its rump, like a big, they can be quite bony around their rump, but they've got a nice rounded thigh, that lovely rounded thigh, then long, I think of it as a, what is it, the leg, and then the teeny little foot on the end. So if we make this is going to be our chest, and then this is going to be for that big thigh at the back. And we come in and put in legs. So there's going to be I'm going to erase here just where it goes into the head, because obviously the crossing over, you know, kind of drawing the lines through each other to get the head and then the body and then the rump just gives you a sense of where the body parts kind of overlap. But sometimes the lines can get a little confusing for you. So if we then take this up and say, okay, this is the shoulder, and we're going to bring the kitty leg down like this. So bending it forward and then a little paw on the bottom. And I'll erase here because that's where the chest kind of goes behind the front leg. And then behind the chest, we're going to have another leg, which also kind of bends at the back. So we can do it almost like a little carbon copy behind there. And I'll just slightly shade that in behind so that we know that that's the faraway leg. And then we're going to have our rump sitting here. So this is the leg, and it kind of comes down like that. And then there's this long section here, and then a little pause at the front, And Kitty's got a very fat tummy. Generally, if you've got a teeny tiny cat, a young cat, it might have a little tail that sticks up like this at the back. But in general, you're going to have a nice round tail, which they often bring round behind around their body like this. So if I bring the tail round like that, they pretty much tend to wrap it like this. So that'll be kitty tail wrapped around as it sits all neat and tidy on its haunches. And I'm going to take this round and up. So I'm just erasing slightly and then bringing the line like this, because they tend to have quite a kind of angled curve back. Okay, so that would be our kitty there. And often they've got a bit of a furry little chest here, so we could put in a little bit of fur on there. And this line wouldn't join all the way to the spine. That's kind of more like the leg coming out like that. And then sitting, and then this is all pretty furry around here. But you know, they've got that, I can't remember, it's got a very specific name, that little pouchy bit just at the back of their belly. My son has told me what the name of it is, and I can't remember. Anyway, so that is our kitty, and it's furry tail. I'm doing this one furry tail, just like soft furry edges here. And that would be that little kitty. It's quite a nice thing to give them a collar or something. I don't know why that suddenly disappeared, but here we are, back again. So it's a good idea. I'm just going to erase some of this because in my sketchiness, I've made it quite messy. So if we put in a collar like this and a little bell or a ID tag or something, that's just to help to define where the neck is. So you can't always define a kitty's neck. As I said, the furrier they are, the harder to define, but that's how you would end up with your cat. It looks slightly elongated on my screen, but there we go. Okay, so the important things with a sitting cat are to get, I'm just going to quickly recap. You want your chest circle under the head. So say we've got the head here, and we've drawn that. Chest circle, almost like an egg at an angle, so that you've got this section facing forwards to push out the chest between the front legs. And then we have this bigger section, which just is a kind of holding position for the big thigh, which they would sit back on their haunches. Okay, so ears would be facing forward, little snout coming out, little tiny triangle, eye, and then oops, leg coming down and out, leg, pretty tail coming round, and then smoothing out the haunch like that, and going back to erase some of what we've got. Okay, so that is our kitty parts. Just quickly putting it together again in retrospect. All right, let us look at, let's think about what's next. A kitty walking. Let's do kitty walking because we want, for standing or walking, we need to have a look. So once again, we're going to have let's draw it coming this way. We're going to do kitty head. So bring your little snout out this way. Eye in here. Eye facing forward, because kitty's facing forward. Little smile. I'm going to raise a little bit just to smooth this out. And let's put an ear. Kitty facing forward. Ear going here. If that ear doesn't seem to be in the right place, needs to go further back. Further back on head. So here we go. Bit of trial and error here as we get our kitty facing in the right direction. Can't see as much of the far ear. Okay. Now this guy's going to be walking away from us. So again, there's going to be a certain placeholder here for those front shoulders, and then going back, and there's the big thigh, as it were, at the back, and probably tail. Kitties' tails are so specific. Some of them are very big and fluffy again. Some of them have a lot of attitude. They're quite small and light, and the way they kind of have these beautiful S shapes and so on can make a difference. So that obviously gives a whole lot of attitude to the cat move. So let's do this kind of like this. Okay, we're going to leave the cat's tail high like that. And right, so at the very front, I always like to start where I've got this placeholder. Now, because the cat is standing up, I'm going to use a fairly upright egg shape oval for the closest shoulder. And again, we can take it out for the one paw which is on the floor, and if we in between, there's going to be a little bit of chest showing. So that's this line here that I'm using, that original placeholder. And let's imagine that kitty is walking quite purposefully. So we're going to take this out of this quite an angle. And we can play around with the paws later. So either very straight, or it could be bent already at the, call it the knee. Do cats have knees? Probably. Okay, so we could have it like this. Kitty's on the way, we're walking. And then body goes back like this. Again, there's that kind of pouchy bit, so they often kind of almost look quite saggy at the back there, just in front of the back leg. And let's say this leg might be, goes like that and out. And then it's got that long bit there like that. I'm really scratching here with my pencil. Wow. So this one could be coming forward. And not really be even on the ground yet. This one is kind of lifted. We can take that one going backwards. This one's on the ground. Would they have both of their paws on the ground, same spot? Potentially not. So let's change this path and say this one also on the ground. Okay. So this is the further away leg. I'm just shading in the further away leg for you, like that. And then this is going to be a bit flatter at the bottom, down. And this is your kitty's haunch. And then again, I go in and I just kind of, obviously this doesn't go all the way to the spine, so we get rid of some of that. Why does it keep, let's see. So that is your kitty when it's walking. So the very important parts, you might remember, I'm going to go in with a different color and just say, okay, I started off, I had cat head, and then this and this. These were kind of my original two placeholders for the standing and walking body, okay? And then once I move on from that, let me go for a different color. I'm going to go for purple. Then I went in for this upright one for the closest shoulder, because you do see that defined shoulder going up to just, sometimes you can actually see the shoulders almost right next to the spine, because kitties skins are pretty thin and flexible, so you can actually see the bone structure working in the skin. So you might get that, that curve going all the way up to close to the spine, but also just to give me the top, because it is very curved, all the way down to give me my first leg. And we can make these paws kind of rounder and put in the little claws and so on, but that is where we start with. And again, I just want to mention that the red ones are in that I just use them initially as a placeholder to get a sense of, okay, this is the chest, this is the back, and obviously the spine kind of joins the two, get the curve of the tail in, and it's nice to have a nice kind of sinuous, a beautiful, elegant curve to the tail, just gives a bit of attitude to it. But then when I go in to draw that back thigh, obviously it's at more of an angle. So I'm going to show you like this angle here. So you're kind of moving from an initial placeholder to a more refined thing, then putting in some lines, all very sketchy. And then you go back and you erase the lines which are least helpful, and you keep the ones that really define what's going on. And you just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking to get your kitty going. And then, all right, let me go back to blue. And so then you can go in and join your little cat's neck in, and I'm going to put in a little collar again because it just helps to define where the neck is. And this further away paw, I want to make it a little bit more like and paw-like. So I'm just going to put that in like that, rounding it off. So you're just starting off with all very simple shapes, and then you gradually fill them out to fit better with what you're trying to, the look that you're trying to get with it. Okay, so that's your cat standing, your cat walking, and obviously there's a whole lot of cat anatomy that comes into this. So you will want to look at how cats actually move and work with that, because otherwise you just end up, yeah, you either end up super cartoony where your cat almost moves like a person. But what I found is most people I know who wanted cartoon cats, they're not necessarily wanting to animate or like go for, for Looney Tunes kind of thing. They actually want just a cartoony version of cats that they see around them. So this is what we are up to here. So now I want to show more of a cat kind of sitting, facing forwards, not the most dynamic side, not the most dynamic angle, but we can also work with that. So I'm just going to move this kitty over and make him a little smaller so that he fits up over here, resizing my kitties and jostling them a little bit into space so that they make space for what I've next got to do. And then we will move on to, okay, so now let's, I wanted to show you, and I wonder if I have, I'm just going to add in something here. So let's just find this reference and find the image. I'm going to import an image as a reference, and then you should be able to see it. Not here yet. Okay, not happening as yet, no problem. Okay, so if we look at cats, often they also have like almost a chunky bit of fur on the outside. So behind their whiskers, they have this kind of jutting outfit. So let's have a look at that now. If we go and say, I'm going to draw a cat, okay, really rough like this, let me use the purple that I had before. Okay, so say we want to draw a kitty facing towards us. So this will be head, ears on the outside. There's our cat kind of formula coming in. Little nose, eyes, whatever looking at there. Then I'm going to have a chest, and each side we're going to end up with paws. So now this cat is sitting pretty much facing us with the paws, and then we're going to see something of the cat behind. So we're going to end up with body kind of sitting like this behind, and potentially a back paw behind. So we might insert a little bit of back paw there and there and maybe cattail at the back like that, or again, this one's looking a little, we'll make him a little grumpy. And so what I'm interested in showing you is this chest placeholder, and then at the back, the rump placeholder. And what we end up having is then the legs sitting here in front, and we go and fill them in like this, and then erase our bigger things behind. Okay, so let's do this a little bit more formally. I'm going to pick up my blue again and do this here. All right, so I wanted to show you the cat head with those kind of bushy, I don't even know what to call them, bushy cheeks behind the whiskers. So I'm going in pretty much with the formula again now, and making my cat eyes, putting in the little snout. And I've kind of left off the bottom of the mouth. I'm going to put in a little chin at the bottom here. Got this snouty thing going on the chin at the bottom, and making him look over this way. And then what I want to do is I want to take him almost out. So if I take this line, which is the kind of part of the crosshairs, if I take this out to here and then bring it in again, and on this side slightly less because that's the far away side, I then put his ear in like that at the top. And we're going to end up with this almost as a fluffy extended area. So in front of the ear, it's almost often on a cat, you'll see it kind of come out like this and out like this. And then the whiskers will go there. So the cat face almost has this slight diamondish look to it as well. Okay, and then I'm going to put in the chest underneath, and I'm going to make it a little bit fluffy and raggedy just to be more interesting. And then behind, I would end up with the leg, I mean the rump, as it were. So taking that out. Let's, from directly below the chest, I'm going to make these kind of quite long, skinny legs here, and then facing out and out. And put the little claws in. And then I'll bring this leg, so this is the top of the thigh, and we'll see the front of the back paw like that. So, and on this side, we might see just a little bit of back paw, but not very much because we're not perfectly side on for this kitty. Okay, so then we're going to take the tail out. Let's imagine the ground's like this. Bring the tail of the kitty, come round. And there we go with kitty. And trying to get the body of the cat furry, again, is you just need to use your pencil, whatever you're drawing with. We need really soft, fluffy lines. And then if you color in a little bit behind here, you can end up getting a bit of a sense of cat depth. So this will always look a little bit lighter and brighter because this is the thigh sticking out from the body shape. And then we've got our paws behind like this. So that is your cat sitting with its body shape. And you can start to play around. So part of what I wanted to show you there was, let's go for our red, what do you call it? The parts that make up the shape of the cat. So a placeholder for the chest, a placeholder for the main body. Then obviously we've got these two skinny pins for the legs. whatever we decide to do with the tail, whether we make it an elegant kind of standing up in the air shape or a curved soft shape around the body or even a sharp shape around the body, it's fine. And then I was also interested to show you this kind of shape that you get in some cats of the face. And it can be tricky to show it because it goes behind the whiskers. And so you need to kind of look at that. And obviously on the other side, it goes like this down and out also behind the whiskers. So on this side, it's because that side is turned slightly away from us, it's not symmetrical, so it's less defined. It doesn't stick out as much on that side, but on this side, much bigger and more defined because that's closer to us. But a lot of kitties do have that sort of almost diamond shape going out from the cheekbones with the whole of the fur, and then back in again here. So that is something to look out for. Okay, that is pretty much where we are with our cats at the moment. Yeah, so if I go back to this set of kitties, this is quite a fun one. Make sure that I'm in the right layer. This is quite a fun one to experiment with. And let's just look a little bit at some expressions. So if we take eyes like this of our kitty, and a lot of kitties do have these kind of almond-shaped eyes almost, not necessarily so angled, but definitely there. Depending on what you do with the eyebrows and the shape of the eye, you're going to end up with your cat looking quite different. So if you angle the inside of this, you're going to get a much like a frownier looking cat. So this is going to be a cranky looking kitty. And then if you have your eyes with the eyebrows high like this, you're going to have a happier looking cat. It could look surprised. You could end up with one eyebrow up, one eyebrow down. So it's worth experimenting with this and just seeing what different expressions you end up with. And then obviously you've also got your mouth. So if you make the mouth look grumpy like this, so like that and downwards looks a bit grim, whereas like that, one side up, one side down is looking uncertain, shall we say, or you can end up something like this, where you end up with almost like a little upside down question mark from the nose. That also gives you a different expression from the mouth. So you can start playing around with mouth shape and eyebrow shape and seeing where that takes you with expressions. Learning about expressions is something it's pretty much never ending because the nuances of expressions are endless. But eyebrows and mouth shape, eyebrows define eye shape. So when the eyebrows are up, down, somewhere in between, one up, one down, and so on, is important because that then affects the shape of the eyes. And then the mouth, obviously, you've got smiley mouth, you've got downturned mouth, and you've got a whole lot in between, like a little, oh my goodness, and whether you've got upper teeth showing, lower teeth showing, all of these kind of things can also come into play. So as you go through with your kitties, you might want to just start off with them really cute and wide-eyed and smiley looking, but as you start playing around with them, you can get them slittier eyed, or like this one, which I just love, the sort of this out look. But it's even interesting to look at this if you change the direction of the eyelids. So when the eyelids are sleeping and you make it like this, as opposed to like this, that can also, one looks kind of fatter and cozier and one looks much more sleepier. Or else you can have them at a different angle, like this. So one, if they're down, it looks a bit sadder. If you have them at a sort of roof-like angle, they look a bit sadder. So all of this comes into the expressions that you're going to be playing around with your cats. So let me clean up a little bit here because I'm making a bit of a mess drawing over my old stuff. Let's go back to here. Okay, we're just undoing and going back to where we were. Okay, so let's just have a look at where we've come from. We started off with our straight kitty, and we've done left looking and right looking. Then we went to our face on, which is absolutely the least dynamic thing you can ever do. So it's always worth having your cat slightly, any character, slightly asymmetrical, just a little bit twisted away from the camera, as it were, because it just looks better. No matter what you're doing, slightly asymmetrical always looks better. And then this is our straight on side profile, just to show how the kitty face goes out. So we have this sense of direction, or it's not just a flat round circle. Okay. Then we went with cat signature, something more angular, as it were, more towards a Siamese kind of a look, or something like that, maybe a Bengal. Anyway, one of those very angular looking kitty breeds. And then we went to the opposite, this absolute fluffy putty tat. So having done that, we then went into poses a little bit more, because I wanted to show you just these very basic shapes that I use literally as placeholders. First to get a chest, and then make sure that that chest sticks out a little bit between the closest front leg and the further away front leg. That's what gives you a sense of depth, what's close, what's far, what's overlapping. Chest is overlapping between the two legs. And then that big round placeholder, round oval placeholder that I use for the thigh. Is it the thigh? Yeah, the thigh of the cat when it's sitting and even when it's standing. So just these are showing you those various placeholders of the cat for sitting and standing, which is pretty much all we've got time for in this particular one. And then the final thing that I want to show you, which is, oops, drops pencil in this back corner, is the kitty with this sort of slight diamond shape at the cheekbones behind the whiskers. Because if you don't go in and define it before you put the whiskers in, it kind of all gets lost behind the whiskers. But it is a very specific cat shape. And what I'm going to include with the kind of show notes at the end of this is a whole series of cat faces, which are just popped off like actual real cat photographs in as a bunch of images, so that you can see there's some very distinctive things. Because you want, final thing you want to get into is cat markings, because obviously tabbies are everywhere out there. So if you end up with a kitty like this, find my cookbook, I like it. So let's say we go in with our cat, and we've got our little face and our little snout and our whiskers and our whatever else, and we might end up going for the diamondy face like that, so that we've got a whole lot of fluffy kitty behind there and a little round chin. Ears. And then if we go into markings, a lot of cats have this sort of almost broken M here. What you can do is, for a tabby, if you just go in and put in little stripy stripes like this, you'll notice in the photograph that I include for you, a lot of cats have a stripe that goes pretty much out from the ear like this. And again, if you've got a very fluffy cat with a slightly diamond-shaped face behind, there's often a marking which goes directly out from the eye like that. So it's worth going in and having a look at the super specific markings that cats have in common. When they do have face markings, they go from a very particular point outwards. And it's only when you have a whole picture, a whole page full of Google images, a whole lot of different tabbies, you suddenly realize, oh my word, it literally, again, is like a formula, a bit like the pointy ears, whiskers, tiny little triangle nose. The point at which those lines go out is very, very specific on cats. And so you'll want to look at that and just start to say, well, what kind of a cat am I wanting to create? and what specific markings will be its trademark, whether it's color, whether it's fluffiness, whether it's tabbiness, whether it's a calico, all of those different things are going to it. Okay, so that is the beginning of your lifelong journey cartooning cats. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.